Hi guys, and welcome back to another true crime and makeup time video. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single week. So if you love makeup and you love true crime, definitely hit that like button, hit that notification bell button so you don't miss any videos, and definitely subscribe, guys, would mean so much to me. Today's case is gripping. When I was on maternity leave, that was like a year ago, isn't that wild? But when I was on maternity leave, I was not watching a lot of true crime. I was trying to just be in my baby bubble, just be at peace. But towards the end of last year, I came across this case and I just can't get her out of my mind. I feel like I want to talk about what happened to her because especially now having children, well, even before having kids, before I got married, when I planned to live alone, this was one of my biggest fears. And I never did end up living alone, but every time I would be alone in my house, or even kind of now it's a bit different because I have kids, but before when I was alone, I used to always worry about this. And my previous house was just not safe at all. I feel that this case is important to share. So us, for the next generation, we are aware of these things and that these things can happen. Let's get into today's case. So just quickly, a lot of people ask me what I use to prime my eyes, and I always list everything in the description box, but I've been using this forever. It's the L'Oreal Infallible Concealer. I mean, you can see I use mine a lot, and I never run out. This is my first tube. I've never run out of this, but it's super drying. Yeah, so it's not good for under your eyes for me, but on top of your eyes, if you set it with a translucent powder, it's bomb. So this is what I use, and I use the shade, I think it's Biscuit. I thought it was vanilla, but it's Biscuit. So today we are talking about Miya Marcano, and it's honestly one of the saddest stories and makes me very angry. So Miya Marcano was born on 26th of March 2002 in Pembroke Pines, Miami, and her father is Marlon Marcano, and he is a pretty famous DJ in Miami, and he's known as Eternal Vibes. Her mother's name is Emas Gabrielle, and Mia's parents, they separated when Miya was pretty young. Her father lived in South Florida, and her mother, I believe she relocated to St. Thomas. So due to this, she would travel back and forth to visit her parents. So even though Mia's parents were separated, the family was super close. They really supported Miya on everything she did. And she had an older brother. His name was Marlon Jr., and she was also really close with him. Miya grew up to be a very happy, outgoing, passionate young girl, and she loved carnivals, like Carnival, not like kids' carnivals. And as she was growing up, she participated in many. Academically too, she was very strong. She graduated from high school in May of 2020, and this was 2 months into COVID. So COVID was March 2020, right? So this was 2 months into COVID. So imagine graduating around that time. Did any of you guys have to deal with that? I feel like that would have been a very tough time, but that's when she graduated, May 2020. Family and friends characterized Miya as outgoing, funny, sarcastic, caring, and just very supportive of her family and friends. Families say that she was very, very kind-hearted, and she was the type of girl who would befriend everyone anywhere she went. And also, guys, she's just so gorgeous. Her eyes, she's so beautiful to me. And just from all her photos, her social media, she really looks like she's just a super happy person. And I know social media is social media, but you can see with Miya, she was really just enjoying her life. Miya lived in the Arden Villas complex in Orlando, Florida, and this apartment complex was right next to the UCF college campus. So because of this, there were a ton of college students who lived in the area, and the area just had a ton of college bars and hangout spots. So it was more of a college hotspot area. Now Miya moved to that area because she initially dreamed of attending UCF college, but then she changed her mind and went to Valencia College, where she studied physiotherapy. I'm not sure what it was like in America, but over here, because of COVID, a lot of students after high school, they ended up deferring their first year of uni. So I feel like the fact that Miya still went on to pursue her college dreams. You know, it says a lot about her because it was like a really tough time. You know, COVID, I feel like I'm still in COVID mindset, but we're moving out of it. But at that time, do you guys remember how bad it was? So when Miya moved into the Arden Villas complex, it was actually her father, Marlon, who helped her move there, and he wanted to check out the area and make sure that it was safe enough for his daughter to be living there. He installed locks on her windows. He would tell her how to be safe. He told her to carry mace and pepper spray and just always be on the lookout to make sure that when she was alone, she was safe. Now, Marlon, before she moved into that place or when she was moving in, he really checked out the area. He just wanted to make sure that he was confident that she would be safe in that apartment. And after doing so, he was pretty confident. And the fact that Miya was also going to be working at the same apartment complex that she lived at, I feel like, it sounds not so safe when you say it like this, but it's almost quite safe because you work and live in the same spot, which I know can be a bad thing, but you're not having to travel far. You're not having to, leave home for a long period of time. Like if you needed to get back home quickly, it's like a short distance. But then at the same time, the negative part of it is that people that you work with know where you live. So Miya worked in the leasing office of the apartment complex where she worked. And I think the days she would work, she would finish most days at around 5 p.m. But it was also a little bit of a difficult job, I think, being a college student, because she had random odd hours, and including the fact that she would work some Friday evenings. So I think when you're a student, you're trying to enjoy your life, that's kind of annoying, but she seemed quite responsible to take on this job and not complain about it, Now, Miya, like I said, was very close to her family, and she was always in contact with her family, and she was especially close with her mother, Ima, and her cousin, Kaylee. Miya was also quite active on social media, especially TikTok and Snapchat. And on Friday, 24th September 2021, she calls her mom and she's like, "Oh my God, mom, I'm TikTok famous," because one of her dances that she had posted on TikTok got over 1,000 likes and comments. Now, that day, that Friday, she was in a particularly good mood because she had missed her family. She hadn't seen them for a while. And that night was the night she was going to be leaving to go from Orlando to Fort Lauderdale to see her family. She would be catching a flight in the evening to go to her dad's place, and her cousin Callie lived there too, so Miya and Callie were super excited to see each other. Also, Miami Carnival was approaching, so Miya was so excited to be celebrating her Caribbean heritage. So on that day, Friday, 24th September 2021, Miya had a shift at work. So at around 4:30 p.m., she's finishing up work, and she texts one of her friends to let her know that she's finishing up work and she's about to head home and just grab her things, maybe pack some last minute things, and then head on off to the airport to catch her flight. She planned to just grab her luggage and then catch an Uber to the airport. Then at around 5:06 p.m., Miya got a text message from that same friend, as well as a Snapchat from Callie. But Miya never responded to the text message or opened Callie's Snapchat. Now, back in Fort Lauderdale, her family is anticipating her arrival. They're excited to see her. And they go to the airport to get her. I'm not exactly sure who, but at the airport, they're waiting. And then once her flight lands, Miya doesn't get off the plane. So they're like, what the hell's going on? She never checked into the airport in Orlando. She never boarded the flight, and she also wasn't responding to any text messages or any calls. Now, obviously, she's a young girl living alone. Her family was concerned and they were worried and they were thinking, what's going on? She's not like this. Like I said, Miya always responded, was always in touch. It just wasn't like her. By 6:45 p.m. that night, her family is like, okay, something's wrong. Her brother, Marlon Jr., was also harassing her phone, trying to get in touch with her. Her mom, Ima, just knew something wasn't right. She knew it wasn't normal because Miya was the type to always respond. And not only was she the type to always respond, be on her phone, she was the type to always respond to her family. So Miya's family reaches out to her friends at school thinking, maybe they heard from her, but no one had heard from her essentially after 5 p.m. After 5 p.m., she just disappeared. So her mom contacts the airport, contacts Uber, contacts Lyft to see if they had made contact with her, and none of them did. Then shortly after, Miya's family contacts the Orlando Police Department and decides to report Miya as missing. Along with that, Miya's mom, Ima, she decides to ask the police to attend her daughter's apartment to conduct a wellness check. Her family also was quick enough to alert the media of Miya's disappearance. I believe the Arden Villas complex also gave them access to footage which showed Miya leaving the leasing office and making her way back to her apartment. She was wearing jeans, a red t-shirt, a black hoodie, carrying a red and white bag, and then she was also holding this yellow rose. And in the footage, you can see Miya, she's walking back to her apartment and she's on her phone or talking on her phone, and she doesn't seem concerned or bothered by anything. Deputy Samir Paulino was dispatched to Miya's place to conduct this wellness check on her, and he arrives at her apartment at around 10:02 p.m. So he knocked several times on Miya's front door, but there was no answer. So he calls up Miya's mom, Ima, and he tells her, no one's answering the door. What should I do? Miya's mom then says to this deputy that she had been in contact with Miya's roommate, and Miya's roommate was on the way back to the apartment, so she's going to let you in. So just wait, let her let you in. So once Miya's roommate comes back, she lets this deputy inside, and he asks her, do you have any information about Miya's whereabouts? Do you know where she could possibly be? So the roommate tells him, all I know is that Miya was supposed to be flying to Fort Lauderdale tonight. I didn't know if she had any other plans. So they go to Miya's bedroom door, and they find that the door to the bedroom is locked. Now, Miya's roommate did not find this to be out of the ordinary. She said that Miya was known to lock her bedroom door, especially if she was going to be out for a long period of time, and that nothing in the apartment seemed out of place. So then the deputy, he goes to the back of the apartment and he goes to the window that would have given him access into Miya's room, and he notices that the window is not locked. So he pushes it open just to have a closer look at the room inside. As he's peering into Miya's room, he doesn't notice anything's wrong, and at this point he has the window all the way open. But then when Miya's roommate joins the deputy at Miya's window, she notices something strange. She said this doesn't seem right. She tells the deputy that Miya's father had secured this window months ago to make sure that it could never be opened from the outside. And unless Miya was the one that had unscrewed the locks, which was unlikely, the window should not have been able to be opened more than a few inches. But at this point, the deputy had the window wide open. So because of this, the deputy and Miya's roommate were able to enter Miya's room through the window. And once they were actually inside the room, Miya's roommate did find several things that just seemed off. Miya's bed was unmade and several pieces of her jewelry were on the floor. And amongst this jewelry was this gold necklace that Miya was known to wear every single day. Along with this, Miya was known to be a very tidy person, and she would not have left her room in this state of mess, especially if she was going to be leaving for a long time. Then Miya's roommate sees a backpack next to Miya's desk, and this backpack was packed for travel, which was most likely the backpack that Miya was going to be taking with her to Fort Lauderdale. And clearly she would not leave that behind. And along with that, what was left behind was her favorite teddy bear. And Miya's roommate knew that Miya would not leave that behind. Miya always traveled with this teddy bear, and now it sat inside her closet. And along with that, they also found the yellow rose that Miya was carrying on her way back from work. That yellow rose was found in her bin. Now, obviously, these things are strange enough, but the most odd thing was that, the most noticeable thing to me would have been this bookshelf that was propped against the door of Miya's bedroom leading out into the rest of the apartment. It was like this bookshelf just propped against the door. And what it looked like was that someone had placed it against the door to prevent the door from being opened from the outside. Then they notice a small patch of dried blood on Miya's pillow. With this information, Deputy Paulina declared Miya a missing person on 25th September at 1:36 a.m. Now, like I said, Mia's family was super close to her, so they were not the type to just sit there and wait. So during this whole time, they were making their way, I think it was like a 3-4 hour drive from Fort Lauderdale down to Orlando. They arrived at about 4 a.m. and the police, I believe, was still on scene. So when they arrived, they were escorted and allowed to search Mia's apartment by themselves. And Miya had several Apple products, like the brand Apple. And so they were trying to do like the Find My iPhone, but they couldn't find her location because her phone had been turned off. So then as they kept searching, they find something that was very troubling, which was under the blue rug in Mia's room. They found a rusty yellow box cutter. They immediately called Deputy Paulino to the scene and he bagged this box cutter for evidence. So as he's conducting his investigation, Detective Paulino begins to ask the family, is there anyone that Miya has recently come into contact with? Has she befriended anyone? Is she seeing anyone? And to the family, one name kept popping up, and that name was Armando Caballero. So this whole thing was taking place in Mia's, like the apartment complex parking lot area. And her cousin, I think it's Kaylee or Callie, she was standing there and she notices the silver car drive in, and the silver car is just watching them. It's watching them and circling the parking lot. So when she makes eye contact with this silver car, they attempt to flee. As this car was attempting to flee, it hit a parked car and almost hit one of Mia's family members, Simone. And this was taking place at around 4 or 5 a.m. So who is this car? So after this, a confrontation ensues between the driver of the silver car and Mia's family. This man turned out to be Armando. Mia's family begins to accuse Armando of sending obsessive texts to Miya. Armando then identifies himself as Armando Caballero to the police, and he states that he is a maintenance worker for the apartment complex. So all this is actually recorded because one of the cousins, I believe, they begin to start filming this altercation, and Armando, he walks up and he's like, "You're looking for Miya?" And they ask him, "Well, how do you know that?" And he states that he was on the phone with a mutual friend of Miya, and her name was Tati. And when he was speaking with Tati, Tati was the one that told him, "Oh, Miya's missing." So that's why he showed up. Mia's family was like, "Tati, Miya tells us everything. We don't know who Tati is. We've never heard her mention someone named Tati." But her family did know, however, that Miya was being harassed by a maintenance worker. So Callie, her cousin, is recording this altercation, and they're basically just like yelling at each other. And Armando's kind of yelling back. He's kind of like, he's acting quite aggressive. And they're just arguing. And I'm like, Armando, you're arguing with the family of a missing person. Like, shut up. And I believe it is Simone in the video who's like yelling back at him and saying, "Who is this Tati person? We've never heard of Tati. You're just talking about Tati like we're supposed to know her." And then I think Armando would have given like a story of why he was there. But her dad goes on to say, "You've been sleeping since 10 p.m. and then all of a sudden you spoke with Tati and now you're here at 4 a.m. Like these pieces don't make up the puzzle." Armando says, "Me and Tati were talking about it, and then she tells me Mia's missing. So I thought, let me go to Mia's apartment to check out the situation." And Simone says, "You keep mentioning Tati, but no one knows about Tati, only you." Her family goes on to accuse him of sending these obsessive texts to Miya, cash apping her money, telling her that he was going to give her all his life savings for her. And Simone very clearly says, "You're obsessed with Miya." And he responded by saying something so strange. He said, "It comes from both sides." So I was like, are you saying that you guys were into each other? Like, it was a strange thing. But then later on, he denies, saying that he never offered to give her his life savings. Armando then gives his details, his name, his address to the police. And I believe Mia's family also jots this information down. Callie also notices that Armando's hands and face were swollen, and he was acting very aggressive, like I said, and quite defensive. So they most likely knew that he was involved. Also, there was a security guard who comes up and he wants to speak to Detective Paulino because he states that he had a little look-see inside Armando's car and he saw a few things that were concerning to him. He saw a screwdriver in a bag, a cell phone case, and an unknown pink blanket in the back of Armando's car. And these items were never looked into by the police on scene. And this same security guard then tells the police, look, I found some fingerprints on the outside of Miya's bedroom window. Would you like to take them in? But these were also not taken or investigated. Actually, what is claimed is that the police actually laughed at this security officer, and the security guard had apparently heard some noise earlier at the maintenance office building. So Miya's family was like, can you at least check that out? They asked the police if they're like, can you check it out? So Armando and the police, they were like, yeah, sure, come in, let's check it out. So Armando then walks the police through that area. I believe the family also go through this maintenance office, and there was nothing to be found. So after this, Deputy Paulino clears Armando to leave the apartment complex, and he said he did this because there was nothing to really hold Armando on. But if you looked in the car, maybe there would have been. Now, the entire community in that area was rattled. Nothing like this had happened in that area, and Miya's face was just plastered all over the media, all over the news. Now, who was this guy? Who was Armando Caballero? And he was I can't do this on camera. He was a 27-year-old maintenance worker at the Arden Villas complex, apartment complex. And he does admit that he asked Miya out a few times, but she had turned him down. So he then goes on to say that despite Miya, rejecting him, they had remained friends, continued a friendship, and the last time he saw Miya was around 3 p.m. the day that she went missing, a couple of hours before her shift ended. And then when he heard late that night, early into Saturday morning, that Miya was missing is when he decided to come back and drive to the Arden Villas complex apartments where he worked at to see what he could find and check on Miya. So that same night or early into Saturday morning, Miya's family decides to not waste any time. So they go around the area, start putting up missing posters and just trying to get the word out there that Miya was missing. Now, remember, they had listened to Armando when he was giving his address to the police, and they decided, okay, let's just go check him out, check out where he lives, see what he's up to. They wanted to conduct their own surveillance on Armando. Sometimes, you just know. You just know. And honestly, good on the family for doing this. I think that they followed their gut instinct. And I don't think they were doing anything wrong. Sometimes your gut feeling never leads you astray. So 4 members of Miya's family went in one car to Armando's apartment in Winter Park and conducted their stakeout. And I've seen the footage, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, but they're sitting in the car and then they're watching Armando across a street, and his car is parked, I believe, on the street. And I don't know if it was an apartment building or a other apartment, but they're watching him, and he's standing there and he begins taking things out of his car. Several items, in fact, a bunch of stuff. He's just removing it out of his car. So Armando was carrying blue medical surgical gloves, a dark-colored backpack, and a multicolored pink blanket. Now, it was an unknown blanket at the time, but this blanket looked a lot like the one that Miya's grandmother had given to Miya.
What is he taking off? He's taking off. He has gloves.
He has gloves.
He has gloves in his hands.
He has gloves.
Gloves and what else?
The blanket.
Oh my God, that is my blanket.
Oh my God, call the police.
Miya's family was not happy with the thought that that blanket could even be Miya's. So they immediately at 8:45 a.m. they call the police just to report that they feel like Armando is involved in this. And I believe they made some sort of a commotion and they confronted Armando. And when this happened, Armando was with his roommate. After this confrontation, he takes off and flees with his roommate in his car. Now, just before 9 a.m., Officer Chad Shepard rocks up and he's speaking with Mia's family, and he calls Armando and tells him, you need to come back to your apartment. So Armando returns with his roommate, Kenny Torres, and along with this unknown male that was also present at the scene. Now, legally, the police, they could not search Armando's apartment, obviously without a warrant. But Armando was like, come in, I have nothing to hide, like search my apartment, there's nothing for me to hide. So off they went. Armando even let Mia's family come through and search his apartment. So they come in, they have a look, but they couldn't find anything. And Officer Shepard, he clears the apartment. Again, less than 45 minutes later, Armando is cleared to go once again. Now, this officer, Officer Chad, he then tells Mia's family, like, you can't come back to Armando's apartment, just leave it, let the police handle it. It is believed that Armando's roommate, Kenny, is the one that got rid of this blanket, but I don't know if there was any proof. So now, because Armando, his name just kept popping up, his behavior was strange, the police did end up getting a search warrant later on that night, early into Sunday morning at about 1:30 in the morning, and they rock up to Armando's apartment to conduct this search, but he is nowhere to be found. I mean, duh. They were hot on his track, so of course he's gone. Now, at this point, the police are still searching for Miya, and search teams are all over the area, and they're focusing especially on this wooded area behind the Arden Villas complex apartment. As the sun went down on the second day since Mia's disappearance, her friends and family, they gathered to have this prayer vigil to support the family and in hopes of just finding Miya. Then on further investigation by the police, they found, it seems like common knowledge, but they found that in order to access the apartments at Arden Villa, you had to have a digital key card. It was a card that you place at a device on the door and then the door will unlock. Now, as most businesses and especially an apartment complex would have, there was a master digital key that could unlock every single door in that complex. Guess who was in possession of this master digital key? Armando. So then the police check the security door lock system to see when and what keys were used to access the door lock on Mia's apartment that day. It was found that on 24th September, the day she went missing, Miya had used her key fob to enter her apartment at 5:06 p.m. Prior to this, it was found that the master key, the master digital key that was in Armando's possession, was used to unlock Mia's apartment at 2:16 p.m. when she would have been at work. Then this master key was used once again at 4:30 p.m. right before Miya finished work. After acquiring this information, Armando is made the prime suspect and an arrest warrant is issued in his name. But again, Armando was nowhere to be found. He had been missing since 3 p.m. that day. On 27th September 2021, some maintenance workers were trying to access this garage unit at another apartment complex called the Camden Club Apartments, and they were trying to access this garage unit without any success. Normally this unit was unlocked, but this time for some strange reason it was locked and they had to drill a hole in the lock to be able to get into this garage unit. Now, this apartment complex was where Armando had been previously employed, and this garage unit was mainly a place that was used to store paint or just maintenance supplies, so it was not really used for anything other than that. So the maintenance workers, they drilled this hole in the lock and they were able to get inside this unit. Once they were inside, they immediately made a 911 call. The lady on the 911 call states that someone had committed suicide on the property. Someone had hung themselves. When the police arrived, they found Armando's body hanging from this garage unit. He was dead. Now, Armando was found partially suspended from the rails in the garage ceiling, and he was hanging from this red band. His feet were only 1 inch off the ground, and he was found wearing a gray t-shirt and black gym shorts. He was in the early stages of decomposition. He had blood pooling from his mouth and his ears, and his body was in the early stage of rigor mortis, and everything was becoming, like his joints were becoming stiff. Armando's car was also found not far from this garage unit, and it was taken in for processing. But guys, Miya is still missing. At this point, it's obviously clear that Armando had something to do with Miya's disappearance. I mean, why else would he have hung himself? Her family still held out for hope, hoping that Miya was alive, and kept searching for her. Volunteer crowds were helping search for Miya, and the next place they were looking was at this wooded area behind the garage unit where Armando's body was found. This area had several walking trails and small ponds, and these volunteer crowds also would hand out flyers about Miya and were just trying anything to get the word out there. They then went back to the garage unit at the Arden Villas complex, searching there, hoping to find anything, and they also had like search dogs, drones, helicopters, everything, just in hopes of finding Miya. So remember, Armando's car was found. So the police began looking at his GPS coordinates from the day that Miya disappeared. Those coordinates took, I mean, it's wild that that was even put in, but those coordinates took the police about 17 miles away from the Arden Villas complex where Miya lived. And it was in this rundown, abandoned buildings area of Miami called Timberscan. And it's a really rough part of Miami. And it was discovered that Armando used to live in this area. Due to him living in this area, he probably knew the area quite well. In an extremely sad turn of events, after 8 days of Miya being missing, a body was found on October 2nd, 2021 that was nearly skeletonized. It was discovered in some bushes near these abandoned buildings, and this body was later identified as belonging to Miya Marcano. Miya was found partially clothed, wearing jeans, a bra, and I believe a robe. It was clear at the time she was getting ready for the airport. Miya's purse and ID had also been found next to her body, and her mouth was covered with black duct tape, and her hands and ankles were also bound with black duct tape. And there was no clear sign whether she had been SA'd, and that's because she had been exposed to the elements. Oh my God, it's so sad. For over a week. Her family was devastated. The whole entire community was devastated that this ended this way. Now, from the records, the digital keycard records, detectives believe that Armando entered Miya's apartment on Friday, 24th September, and they believe he went there at this time to remove the locks on Miya's window so that the window could be exposed and removed fully. They then believe that he returned to her apartment at 4:30 p.m. knowing she was going to be finishing work very soon, that he entered her apartment and he hid in her room waiting for her to come home from work. Once she returned home, he attacked her and then removed her from the apartment through that open window. Now, it's unclear exactly what happened after he took Miya out of her bedroom window, but a few hours later at 7 p.m., he calls in a fake maintenance request, and then he calls the Arden Villas office staff to let him into the gates, And it is believed he did that so that he would have an alibi. And then this is so weird. At 7:16 p.m., he once again goes to Mia's apartment and he uses his master key card to swipe at her lock, but he doesn't enter, which is just so strange. 20 minutes later, his cell phone data shows him driving to the timber scan area, to those apartment complexes there, where he leaves Mia's body at around 8:30 p.m. Just an hour later, Mia's mom calls the police to report her missing. Now, because her body was left outside, obviously it was exposed to the elements, and this is something I hate in cases like this, but because of this, a lot of her injuries were unidentifiable by the coroner. So it was just really hard to determine what exactly happened to Miya. And because of this, because they couldn't identify a lot of the stuff, the coroner had to declare her death as homicide by undetermined means, which is just so truly sad, because I feel like as a family, do you really want to know? But at the same time, I feel like you want to know for your, like, just to know. I don't know. I think it's a really complicated and hard situation. A memorial service was held for Miya on October 14th in Fort Lauderdale, where her family and friends were, and a bunch of people attended this service just to pay their respects and tributes to Miya. And she was just so loved by so many, and I can't imagine how to, and knowing that Armando was gone, the person who did this was not going to be held accountable. After her death, Mia's family advocated for a bill that would change the processes of residential security. What their goal was, they wanted to strengthen security measures in residences across Florida, require criminal and sexual offender background checks for all apartment complex employees. Along with this, apartment management would need to give residents 24 hours notice before any workers could enter their premises. This is now called Miya's Law. I mean, you would think it's common sense for apartments and managers to give notice before someone can just freaking enter your place. What's it like in America, guys? Over here, you can't. Like, the landlord can't just enter, a tenant's home, whether or not they own it. Like, they can't. And like, for example, we're renting right now, like, while our house is being built, and our landlord has never come here. I mean, he's a pretty chill landlord, but if he needs to organize something or someone needs to come and value the property, something like that, they give us like days notice. And if we say no, they'll just be like, okay, well, when can they come? It's pretty strict here in Australia. I mean, things still happen, but it's pretty strict here. The sad thing, and the thing that is the most infuriating, is that it is now known that Armando had a criminal history. About 6 months prior to Mia's death, a 23-year-old woman had reported Armando to the police for taking a dumbbell and smashing through her bedroom window. This woman suspected that it was Armando who did this to her bedroom window because he was a maintenance worker at her apartment at the time, and Armando had been pursuing this woman romantically, and he kept asking her out on dates, and she actually said yes, she was going to go on a date with him. But after she said yes, he goes, okay, well, let's have the date tonight. And when he decided to move the date of the date, she turned him down, and that's when he got pissed off. And this woman identified Armando because he had written her a note, and the sheriff at the time had used this note to identify Armando through his fingerprints. His fingerprints were also found on the window to this woman's apartment, but they weren't found on the dumbbell that was used to break her window. The weird thing is, this was the same apartment complex where he was found dead. I mean, guys, he clearly had some issues. He had an issue with rejection. And what do you guys think? Do you think the police dropped the ball here? I mean, the security guard of the apartment complex that Miya lived at was more proactive in trying to grab some fingerprints off the crime scene where Miya was missing from and the possessions that were in Armando's car. Like, just, hello, let's do some investigation. The security guard was more into it. That happened the day she went missing, like hours later. If they had just taken a mere 5 minutes, to just collect some evidence, some dusty, like maybe they would have apprehended Armando sooner. Maybe he wouldn't have had the chance to, Miya was such an energetic, happy, positive, light in this world from what you can see. And this piece of dookie decided to take her life. Why? Because she wouldn't date you? I mean, he wasn't even a bad looking guy. Like, if he wasn't such a creep, maybe women would want to date you. I mean, you want to be a creep as a way, like stalking and harassing women, then apparently you're giving her money. Like, if that's not going to make a woman date you, what makes you think that being weird is? He was a maintenance worker supposed to maintain the apartments, not harass the residents. Then he also took the most frustrating way out of this because Mia's family never got any justice. And that's exactly why Mia's law should exist. We should feel safe in our own freaking homes. Like, a maintenance worker can just come in and come out of your home. Like, do you know how many cases of that you hear? It's so freaking creepy. And there should be some better protections. Like, you should at least get a notification every time they're in your home. You should, install cameras? You have to take it to that level. You don't get to do that to an innocent human being, robbing her of her life just because, you feel like it, because she wouldn't date you. And obviously, guys, I know it's a lot more than that. I know it's not just because she wouldn't date him. There's obviously something wrong in his brain. But people like that should not be having access to how many people lived in that apartment. You should not be having access to that many people's lives. It just blows my mind that humans, us as humans, we do this shit to each other. Like, we are our own worst enemies. Miya Marcano's death was tragic, but like so many others, was preventable. I talked about this Australian case like a year or so ago where an Australian woman was murdered by the school janitor, the school where she worked at. It's just crazy that certain professions don't do background checks, especially when they have access to so many people, when these type of employees, have access to so many different places like a janitor. Armando was given a master key fob, meaning access to anyone's apartment. When you can so easily violate someone's privacy with a single swipe of a card, you should at least be guaranteed to be a decent person. Miya did not deserve to be harassed and attacked by a man that wouldn't take no for an answer inside her own home. She deserved to feel protected and safe in her own home. I couldn't even imagine how she felt when she walked into her own bedroom and was confronted by him. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts on this case down in the comments below. I appreciate you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Besitos, guys. Bye. Look who just woke up, guys. Look who just woke up. Look who just woke up.
Oh, you're big one now.